I'm not gonna lie, my ass is kinda in the jackpot with this video. See, this episode was originally supposed to be about Shadow Sorcerer, the last hurrah of the supremely horrible Silverbox games. But, I can't beat it. It might be, without exaggeration, one of the most difficult games I've ever played. I have tried for hours, and I have not, to this point, come even close to reaching the end. That this game has done such an outstanding job of bending me over a barrel has left me without a video for this week. Alright, let's play some Unlimited Adventures. So, Unlimited Adventures is kind of a weird game to talk about, mainly due to the way that it isn't really a game at all. As I mentioned in my video about the original Neverwinter Nights, it's more of an all-in-one toolkit that allows users to create their own adventures within the same engine used for the Gold Box games like Pool of Radiance. It was released in 1993, presumably as one final way for strategic simulations to milk whatever cash they could out of anything and everything Goldbox related, because at this point, critics and fans alike were pretty tired of these games, primarily on account of the fact that stuff like Eye of the Beholder, far more technologically advanced and visually appealing, had hit shelves. And yes, people, I'm working on an Eye of the Beholder video. It's a big game with a lot to talk about. It's taking some time. Still, the fact that Unlimited Adventures was more than powerful enough to bring most any idea to life while requiring effectively zero technical know-how on the part of the player led to it developing a very dedicated, if smaller, following. In the 3 decades since its release, some odd 650 modules comprising original tales, tabletop adaptations, and everything in between have been released. Now, the early planning for this video was set up that it would just be something of a retrospective of Unlimited Adventures itself, but as you can imagine, the history of a game that's had over 30 years of work put into it by its community is rich and a heck of a lot of fun, leading me to eventually come to the conclusion that it's probably worth a deeper dive at another time. Remember, our are in the jackpot here, I'm working on a tight schedule. So I figured it might just be better to pick out a fan-made module and talk about that. After all, it is the work of the fans that gives Unlimited Adventures life. It did come with a pre-made campaign called Heirs to Skullcrag, an unofficial gold box game of sorts, but it's, from what I can tell by the parts I played and the internet, very mid. Ironically, it's like The Wailing Death, the story of Neverwinter Nights. That being BioWare's 2003 Neverwinter Nights, in the way that it seemed like it was just cobbled together out of some guilt-ridden sense of obligation on the part of the developers. No one purchased either UA or Neverwinter Nights to play the stock image equivalent that is its included story. You bought it to play the awesome fan adventures, you know what I'm saying? As such, the module that I decided to delve into, as if you couldn't tell from the title, is Curse of the Fire Dragon. Brutal honesty, I didn't really know which module to pick on account of there being literally hundreds to choose from, as I said earlier, but as far as I can tell, Curse, as I'll be calling it from now on, is seemingly one of the best in the history of Unlimited Adventures. It's mentioned on websites like TV Tropes, is in the Hall of Fame of modules over at the forums for UA, and the community reviews of it seemed pretty glowing. Released in 2000 by one Darius Whiteheart, and I seriously hope that's this fellow's real name and not an online pseudonym because that would be a killer name to go through life with, Curse is a level 5 starting adventure that lets the player import their own party or roll a pre-generated one, as I did here. Set in a general fantasy world and taking place primarily in a town called Rama, it's up to the party to put an end to a damnable fire dragon that terrorizes the local lands, unraveling mysteries and making both friend and foe along the way. And for the sake of not prolonging any sort of charade, I'll just get it out of the way right now. Curse of the Fire Dragon is very, very solid. And I'm only so blunt about my thoughts of this experience because, as I'm sure viewers of some of my previous videos may be aware, I am not exactly a huge fan of the Gold Box games. Generally, I find the combat, which is like 80% of the content for those unaware, slow and unintuitive, while the lack of any worthwhile narrative leads to almost the entirety of the collection feeling hollow and unfulfilling, both of which say nothing about the archaic systems you have to work with in terms of menuing and navigation. Believe me, in large part due to the history that these games have in the world of digital Dungeons & Dragons, I have tried and tried and tried some more to like them, but I just can't. Part of the reason I've dragged my feet with something like a Pool of Radiance video is because I don't think most people, especially those that have a great deal of nostalgia associated with any of the Gold Box titles, would want to hear what I have to say about them. People already believe that I hate Greyhawk, the progenitor of D&D Worlds itself. I don't need people knowing that I don't like the dawn of D&D video gaming either, alright? Oh, god damn it. Anyway, despite my negative predispositions around the very fabric of the engine that this game was made within, I thought it was an absolute and complete banger. Honestly, it's the first game within the Gold Box engine that I have earnestly enjoyed, and there's a lot of reasons for that. For one, Curse is a supremely polished experience, always a hallmark of a well-made fan endeavor. Part of that polish comes from the fact that the Gold Box games did, to their credit, start to implement features such as higher quality graphics and better sound support towards the end of their run, both of which are present in Curse. But the greater deal of said polish comes from the way that it makes use of fan-made hacks, changes to the engine that allow for greater customization. Like I said, I'll get into all of this in a future video, but just know that these hacks grant Curse the ability to implement things like new artwork, which is why aspects like the viewfinder and character portraits look so different from the other Gold Box games, items, and music. It actually uses a few tracks from previous Musings subject matter Al-Qadim the Genie's Curse. An unexpected surprise, but a welcome one. It also uses the Duel of Fates piece, from Star Wars, at points. It's a bit jarring at first, but then you realize you're listening to Duel of Fates, the Gold Box game, and quickly get over it. That polish enables Curse to tell a story that far surpasses just about anything that the official Gold Box titles had to offer. Granted, that's a low bar to clear, seeing as it does so simply by having a story to begin with, but the point remains. For its part, I wouldn't say it's a particularly groundbreaking narrative, being based on a fairly simplistic presence and following some of the more traditional fantasy beats, mainly in the way that the crux of the story centers around the collection of 4 tokens of the elements, but it's told in a way that is engrossing. There are some legitimate twists and turns over the course of the tale, and the way that it doesn't hold your hand, forcing you to take in your surroundings and really interact with the characters you come across in order to figure out how to properly proceed, only makes it that much stronger. Not going to spoil anything, but I was pleasantly surprised by the way in which it kept me playing. Most of the areas you explore, found by navigating through a nifty overworld map, have their own backstories, and in a way that is impressive considering there's no NPCs to be found outside of dialogue situations, rarely feel static. There's always something you can be looking for or trying to uncover, which helps to fill in the gaps and lead you along your quest. That even extends to the small collection of side quests you can undertake, which, with the way they provide uniquely powerful items to better outfit your party with, makes it so you'll definitely want to complete them. As I said in the intro, Curse takes place in a more general fantasy world, one that doesn't even get named if I'm not mistaken, so the fact that its areas and quests have tangible histories to them is admirable. It's for that reason that I would recommend playing with the pre-generated party. They fit well into the world that Curse creates and the dialogue situations that arise. I'm sure it's just as fun with a party of one's own making, but these characters, beyond being balanced well for anything you might come across, just feel right within the context of everything happening. And in a way that I'm sure is completely unsurprising to anyone that has a functioning brain, the way in which Curse leverages its heightened polish and story to deliver an honest-to-goodness experience makes the more unflattering portions of the Gold Box engine a bit more palatable. For the most part, I still found the combat sequences unenjoyable and cumbersome, but they're far more tolerable when you know you're actually working towards something outside of the right to engage in more combat. I was even willing to put up with the awful inventory management. Although just barely. This really is like pulling teeth, my god! In light of some of those frustrations, I came to really appreciate that Whiteheart affords the player some more accessible features, such as the overhead map, which is a near necessity in preventing someone as directionally challenged as myself from getting lost in every area, as well as a fortune-telling NPC who, provided that you pay her fee, can give you a bit of a nudge in the right direction if you find yourself stuck. With all of that coming together, I think Curse reveals that the main issue with some of the SSI Gold Box adventures is that they're so entirely one-dimensional, which is insane to think about because those titles had the luxury of utilizing popular, pre-existing universes and concepts. But it's in the way that Curse delivers a more complete product overall because of the 3 aspects I just highlighted that, in my opinion, it comes to tower over those original entries. It's not perfect, of course. There's a few fights that are probably a bit more challenging than they should be, especially with regard to the fact that the module does focus a bit more on the story it's trying to tell, and sometimes finding what you need to progress in certain dungeons can be difficult, necessitating that you absolutely abuse the look feature and your L key to make sure you don't miss anything important as you inch along. And at least in 2024, some of the dialogue and imagery can be a touch campy. Not necessarily in a bad way, but more so that it reminds you of what fantasy stories of the early 2000s were like. We don't need to go back to those times. But overall, when all is said and done, Curse of the Fire Dragon is a hell of a time. Fun and fulfilling. Not only did it absolutely blow any expectations that I may have had out of the water, it made me enjoy playing a gold box game. So much so that I'm almost certain I'll be returning to check out other modules in the future. If you're a fan of Unlimited Adventures and have some recommendations, send them my way. If Unlimited Adventures has been sitting in your game library for God knows how long as it was mine, then you owe it to yourself to crack it open. I've left links to all the relevant websites you'll need to get started in the description. I'll be back another time to talk about the history of UA itself, but in the meantime, you should be playing Curse of the Fire Dragon.